One of these sweeteners was just linked to a 2 times higher risk of heart attack and stroke in a major study published in Nature Medicine. One of them barely anyone's heard of, and it's so safe that the FDA doesn't even count it as sugar at all. One of them spikes your blood sugar, even though it's marketed as a diabetic-friendly sweetener. And one of them does something that no other sweetener does. It actually lowers your blood glucose after meals. Not just avoids raising it, but actively brings it down. I've been working in metabolic health for the past 10 years as an exercise physiologist. I test glucose responses professionally. And the sweetener space is one of the most confusing, most mismarketed food categories in the entire space, especially for people who are living with type 2 diabetes or prediabetes that are trying to make the right call. So today, I am ranking all 5 from worst to best, based on 3 things and 3 things only: what they do to your blood sugar, what the research says about your long-term health, and whether the science actually holds up, or if it's just marketing dressed up as nutrition. The answer might make you throw something that is already in your cabinet right now. So stay with me. And as always, I want to give you free actionable steps so you can actually reverse the root cause of high blood sugar levels. Go ahead and comment checklist below this video, and I'll go ahead and send you the 10 daily habits that you must do to reverse insulin resistance, the root cause behind high blood sugar. It's 100% free. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. At number 5, we have xylitol. Use with caution. Xylitol has been sold as a safe sugar alcohol for decades, but new research from 2024 says that it's time to revisit that. Xylitol is a sugar alcohol found naturally in small amounts in fruits and vegetables. It's been in sugar-free gum and dental products for years. And yes, it genuinely does help prevent cavities. That part is real and well established. But here is where it gets complicated, especially for people living with diabetes. Problem number 1, it does raise blood sugar levels. Xylitol has a glycemic index between 7 and 13. That is low compared to table sugar, which is at 65, but it's not 0. And for someone trying to have tight blood sugar control, this matters, especially if you're consuming it in multiple servings of gum, baked goods, and protein bars throughout the day. It adds up quietly. And problem number 2, the cardiovascular signal. This is actually the bigger concern, and it's new. In 2024, the same research team that published the erythritol heart risk study in Nature Medicine published a follow-up in the European Heart Journal looking at xylitol. They found that high circulating xylitol levels were associated with increased platelet aggregation, meaning that the blood clots more easily, and they were independently associated with a higher risk of major cardiovascular events. This is from the same Cleveland Clinic lab behind the 2023 erythritol paper. The mechanistic concern, which is platelet clumping, seems to apply to both sugar alcohols. Now, there is important context to this. This is an observational association. It cannot prove that xylitol causes heart events. It's worth noting that the body produces xylitol naturally, particularly in people living with metabolic dysfunctions. So, elevated blood levels may partly reflect underlying disease as opposed to just intake alone. That said, when a signal like this appears with a plausible biological mechanism, it warrants caution, especially if you already carry a cardiovascular risk, which most people living with diabetes do. Most of the research showing harm also used higher doses than you would get in a typical piece of gum. But cumulative exposure through different and multiple products adds up. Here is the bottom line on xylitol. The dental benefits are real, but the cardiovascular signal is concerning enough that people with diabetes who already carry elevated cardiovascular risk should minimize it. There are better options at every rank above this. Number 4, erythritol. Use sparingly. Erythritol got a lot of headlines in the year 2023. Here's what the study actually said and what it didn't say. Erythritol is probably the most common sugar alcohol you'll encounter if you've been buying keto or diabetic-friendly products. Keto ice cream, protein bars, low-carb chocolate. Erythritol is almost always the bulk sweetener behind them. And for blood sugar specifically, it's actually very good. Glycemic index of essentially 0. It does not raise glucose. It does not trigger insulin. It's absorbed through the small intestine and excreted through urine almost unchanged, which is also the reason why it causes less digestive upset than other sugar alcohols like xylitol or maltitol. So why is it ranked number 4? Well, in the year 2023, February to be exact, the researchers from the Cleveland Clinic published a study that sent shockwaves through the nutrition world. They followed over 4,000 people across the US and Europe and found that people with the highest blood levels of erythritol had approximately twice the risk of major adverse cardiovascular events, heart attack, stroke, death, compared to those with the lowest levels. And they also did a mechanistic experiment. They gave volunteers a single serving of erythritol, basically the amount that you would find on a keto ice cream. And they found that blood levels stayed elevated for over 2 days. And in lab experiments, erythritol did cause platelets to aggregate more easily, meaning that blood clotted more readily. Now, here is the important nuance, because headlines, of course, missed this. This was an observational study. It cannot prove causation. So there are 2 important reasons for caution here. First, people with more metabolic disease eat more keto products containing erythritol. So erythritol might be a marker of who is already sick, not the direct cause. Second, and this is something that most coverage miss, the body produces erythritol naturally as a byproduct of glucose metabolism. People with insulin resistance and the metabolic syndrome produce more of it endogenously. So some of that elevated blood erythritol levels may reflect underlying metabolic dysfunction already, not just dietary intake of erythritol. And follow-up Mendelian randomization studies have not really found a causal link yet. So the overall evidence remains associative. But here is what I tell our followers. When a study of this size, published in a journal of this caliber, finds a signal like this, especially with a plausible biological mechanism, you don't just dismiss it, but you don't panic either. You treat it as a real signal under active investigation, and you moderate accordingly, especially if you are already at cardiovascular risk. So here is the bottom line on erythritol. Zero glycemic impact is genuinely useful, but the cardiovascular signal is real enough to warrant caution, especially daily use in large amounts. For people with existing heart disease risk alongside diabetes, I would rank this as an occasional use only. Number 3, stevia. It's a good choice. Stevia is the sweetener that most diabetics switch to first. They are right to. But there's a version of stevia that you have probably bought in the past that is not as clean as you think. Stevia comes from the Stevia rubidiana plant. The sweet compounds known as steviol glycosides are extracted from the leaves, and they are roughly 200 to 400 times sweeter than sugar. So you almost need nothing to sweeten something effectively. For blood sugar, stevia has a glycemic index of 0. It does not raise glucose. It does not trigger insulin secretion. And a well-designed clinical study found that it actually does something better than that. Participants who consumed stevia before a meal had significantly lower postprandial glucose and lower postprandial insulin compared to the sucrose group without compensating by eating more at the meal. They also reported similar satisfaction levels. And that last part matters. Stevia didn't just avoid raising blood sugar. It was associated with lower glucose and insulin responses at the meal that followed. That is a very meaningful metabolic signal, not just a neutral one. There's also emerging evidence that stevia may also have mild beneficial effects on insulin sensitivity and inflammation, though this research is at an earlier stage and mostly done on animal models or small human samples. And here's the big nuance that most people miss about stevia. Go ahead and walk into any grocery store and pick a product that says stevia. Flip it over and read the ingredients. In most cases, the first ingredient listed is erythritol, or sometimes even dextrose, with stevia extract further down the list just as a flavoring agent. To be clear, that product right there is not stevia. It's a blended sweetener that happens to contain stevia. And if you've been buying it thinking that you are avoiding erythritol or a blood sugar impact, now you know that might not be the case. Pure stevia is single ingredient, no fillers, no blends. It's what the research is actually studying. Look for pure stevia extract or stevia leaf extract as the only ingredient. After doing some further research, I realized that the liquid form of stevia extract is probably the cleanest form. So here is my bottom line on stevia. It's one of the most well-studied natural sweeteners available. Zero glycemic impact, possible mild metabolic benefits, excellent safety profile across decades of use. The catch is product purity. Most commercial stevia products are blends, so go ahead and buy pure. Number 2, we got monk fruit. Excellent choice. Monk fruit does everything stevia does for blood sugar. And then it adds something else that stevia doesn't have. Monk fruit comes from a small green melon native to Southeast Asia. The sweet compounds are called mogrosides, which are 150 to 250 times sweeter than sugar. Like stevia, you need barely any of it. Glycemic index, 0. No blood sugar impact, no insulin response. The FDA recognizes it as generally safe. On blood sugar response alone, monk fruit and stevia are tied up. So what puts monk fruit at number 2? The compounds that make monk fruit sweet are not inert. They are biologically active. Mogrosides have been shown in research to have significant antioxidant and anti-inflammatory properties. For someone living with prediabetes or type 2 diabetes, where low-grade chronic inflammation is both a driver and a consequence of the condition, this is not a trivial detail. As a matter of fact, research demonstrates that mogrosides activate antioxidant pathways, reduce inflammatory markers, including TNF-alpha and interleukin-6, and show hepatoprotective effects in metabolic stress models. While most robust data is in animal studies and cell studies, the mechanistic picture is compelling and consistent. There's also early research suggesting mogrosides may support pancreatic beta cell function, the cells responsible for producing insulin in the first place. This is early stage science, not a clinical claim, but it's a direction of research that doesn't exist for any other sweetener on the list. Now, exactly like stevia, most commercial products out there that sell monk fruit are blends mixed with dextrose or erythritol. You can walk into any market, look for a monk fruit bag and flip it over, read at the first ingredient, and it says erythritol. So if you're trying to avoid erythritol, go ahead and read the label. For monk fruit, pure monk fruit extract. Liquid drops are often the cleanest. It's exactly what you want. So here is the bottom line on monk fruit. Zero glycemic impact, biologically active antioxidant compounds, excellent safety profile, no identified risks. Edges out stevia for the anti-inflammatory properties of mogrosides. And remember, buy pure. Avoid blends with erythritol. And drumroll, at number 1, we have allulose. Probably the best option for diabetics. Allulose is a rare sugar, technically a monosaccharide that occurs naturally in tiny amounts in figs, raisins, and jackfruit. It tastes almost identical to table sugar. It bakes, caramelizes, and freezes like sugar. And here is where it gets remarkable. Your small intestine absorbs it, but your body cannot metabolize it. So it gets excreted through urine almost completely unchanged. The result is 0.4 calories per gram versus 4 calories per gram for sugar, no blood sugar impact, and no insulin response. The FDA recognized this reality and made an unprecedented regulatory decision in 2019. Allulose does not have to be counted in a product's total sugar or added sugar grams on a nutrition label. That is the only sweetener with that status. But here's what separates allulose from everything else on the list. Allulose has shown meaningful potential to support glucose metabolism in acute trials, not just passively avoid disrupting it. Multiple studies show that consuming allulose alongside or before carbohydrates measurably reduces the postprandial glucose spike from those carbohydrates. The mechanism is actually pretty interesting. Allulose inhibits alpha-glucosidase and alpha-amylase, the enzymes your gut uses to break down carbohydrates into glucose. When those enzymes are slowed, glucose enters your bloodstream more gradually. Blood sugar rises less, and the insulin demand drops. Multiple subsequent studies have replicated the glucose-lowering effect of allulose at doses of 5 to 10 grams consumed with a carbohydrate-containing meal. The effect is consistent across populations, including people with type 2 diabetes and prediabetes. It's worth noting that most studies are measuring acute effects. The long-term clinical picture is still building. But the short-term data is one of the most consistent across the list that I just told you. Allulose can cause gas and bloating at high doses, typically above 15 or 20 grams in a single sitting. At normal amounts, 5 to 10 grams, most people tolerate it well. My recommendation is to start small if you've never used it. Now, allulose is more expensive than the other sweeteners that I just mentioned, and harder to find at physical stores, though it's becoming increasingly available online. It comes in granulated and liquid forms. For baking, it behaves almost like real sugar. It browns, it caramelizes, it even holds moisture like sugar, which makes it practically the most versatile option in this list. So here is my bottom line on allulose. Zero net glycemic impact, active glucose lowering mechanism via enzyme inhibition, FDA's only sweetener excluded from sugar counts, excellent baking performance, no identified cardiovascular risk signal. This is the most metabolically beneficial sweetener available to people with diabetes right now. To summarize, here are the final rankings. At number 5, we have xylitol. Use sparingly, raises blood sugar slightly, new cardiovascular risk signal, associative, not proven causal, but worth taking seriously given the mechanism. At number 4, we have erythritol, zero glycemic impact, but cardiovascular risk signal in 2023 Nature Medicine study, observational, not proven causal, but meaningful enough to warrant moderation, especially daily use, so occasional use only. At number 3, we have stevia, zero glycemic impact, decades of safety data, possible mild anti-inflammatory effects, buy it pure, because most products are a blend. At number 2, we have monk fruit, 0 glycemic impact, plus antioxidant, anti-inflammatory, mugroside compounds, edges out stevia. Again, buy it pure. And at number 1, we have allulose, the gold standard, 0 glycemic impact, plus actively lowers postprandial glucose, that means post-meal blood sugar, via enzyme inhibition in acute trials. FDA doesn't count it as a sugar, no cardiovascular risk signal. My recommendation is to use stevia or monk fruit for everyday sweetening. Use allulose for baking, or if you want something that actively supports your blood sugar response after a meal, but in that case, there are better things like berberine, for example. I haven't talked about berberine in this video, but if you're interested in learning more about this plant compound, go ahead and click right here to watch a video from Dietitian Diana explaining how berberine can help your blood sugar. Lastly, when you're buying any sweetener, go ahead and check the label, because the word stevia or monk fruit in the packaging doesn't really tell you much about what's actually inside of the product. If you found this video useful, please go ahead and share it with someone who is still reaching for table sugar every day. And if you want free actionable steps to reverse the root cause of high blood sugar levels, go ahead and comment checklist below this video, and I'll send you 10 habits that will help you become more insulin sensitive and lower your blood sugar levels. It's 100% free. As always, drop any questions in the comments. I read all of them, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care.